This is the hashtag we are going to be using for this event. Anybody who wants to make comments on Twitter will be able to use it. Ernest Hemingway was the patron saint of flash fiction. This is just as well because he didn't normally come across as a saint. While I try to write a story in 1,000 words or 500, very occasionally 50, for a specific audience, he wrote a story in 6 words. The first 2 words, for sale, are familiar to anyone who looks in the classified ads of the local newspaper, and the story takes the reader from the familiar to the unfamiliar. And the next 2 words, baby's shoes, create a mood. I imagine most people are thinking of innocent babies, adorable, and perhaps of doting parents or grandparents buying them shoes. And with the last 2 words, Hemingway creates a completely different mood. As the meaning sinks in, the reader is invited to think about the tragedy that might lie behind this narrative. One thing about flash fiction is that it requires a certain amount of work on the part of the reader. You have to use your imagination. In this case, your imagination will take you to a very dark place. Hemingway was a very straightforward speaker and writer. There is a legend that when F. Scott Fitzgerald of Great Gatsby fame was going on about the rich being different from us, Hemingway responded, "Yes, they have more money." Ray Bradbury was a highly successful and highly original science fiction writer. At a time when people are closing down libraries, it is as well to remember the author of Fahrenheit 451, in which books were burnt by people who were afraid of ideas. I have tried to edit Ray Bradbury's advice down to 5 things. I try to write a short story every week. I don't regard the idea of 52 duds in a row as a challenge. I think of it as an encouragement. Writer's block did not exist for Ray Bradbury. He would just go on writing literally anything until it went away. The next piece of advice is a bit harsh, but I can vouch for the importance of having at least one person who believes in you. "You're fired" is not something I have ever had cause to say to my friends. Very few can make a living selling short stories. I managed to buy the occasional bottle of wine, and we have the occasional night out on the proceeds of writing. I have noticed that Amazon are quite punctilious about making sure I pay tax. According to what I read in the newspapers, they are less fussed about paying tax themselves. A lot of people enjoy writing short stories, and that is a kind of payment in itself, and they share them with friends or on blogs. 10 things you love you can write about lovingly. 10 things you hate you can destroy in a story. Believe me, that's more satisfying than it ought to be. And the last one is to read good short stories. Now, I wouldn't presume to tell you which writers to choose, but I have mentioned 3 writers already that you might wish to have a look at. Ray Bradbury did not suggest you imitate any other writer. You may like them, but you can't be them. Mark Twain's work was of its time. He used racial terms we would not expect to hear today from civilized people. However, in addition to his stories, there is one piece of knowledge which I would like to share with you. In a letter to a friend, he wrote, "I apologise for the length of this letter. I didn't have time to write a short one." Some people will write a story of whatever length it takes and then cut it down to a short story. One of the things you learn is that you can do all this work in your head without writing anything down. However, I always write notes as soon as possible. Too often I've got to the laptop, booted it up and thought, now what was that brilliant idea I had? And finally, I would like to talk about the American online magazine Everyday Fiction. Apart from the fact that they buy some of my stories, they have one important characteristic, which is whether they accept your story or they reject it, and I hope you will all at least go away today and think about trying your hand at flash fiction. They will always tell you why they have accepted or rejected it, and that is the most useful service they could provide.